Captain Sir Tom Moore, PM announces national clap. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has encouraged members of the public to clap for Captain Sir Tom Moore at 1800 Greenwich Mean Time on Wednesday. The 100-year-old, who raised almost £33 million for NHS charities by walking laps of his garden, died with coronavirus in Bedford Hospital on Tuesday. Mr. Johnson said the clap would also be for all those health workers for whom he raised money. He added Captain Sir Tom's life was a long life lived well. Meanwhile, dozens of tributes have been left outside his home in Marston Moretane, Bedfordshire. Captain Sir Tom tested positive for COVID-19 last week. His family said due to other medication he was receiving for pneumonia, he was unable to be vaccinated. The Army veteran won the nation's hearts by walking 100 laps of his garden last spring during the first coronavirus lockdown. Raising money for NHS charities together, he had initially set out to raise £1,000, but he eventually raised £32,794,701 from more than 1.5 million supporters and was knighted by the Queen in July. A weekly applause for frontline NHS staff and other key workers ran for 10 weeks during the UK's first lockdown. Queen leads tributes to Captain Sir Tom Moore. How will Captain Tom Moore's millions be spent? Captain Tom's birthday cards opened by volunteers before Prime Minister's questions earlier. The House of Commons held a 1-minute silence in memory of Captain Sir Tom and those who have lost their lives as a result of the pandemic. Afterwards, Mr. Johnson said, "We all now have the opportunity to show our appreciation for Captain Sir Tom and all that he stood for and believed in. That is why I encourage everyone to join in a national clap for Captain Tom and all those health workers for whom he raised money at 1800 Greenwich Mean Time this evening." Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer added Capt. Sir Tom embodied the spirit of Britain and welcomed the announcement. Georgia Secretary of State investigating whether pro-Trump attorney voted illegally. CNN. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger has launched an investigation into whether attorney Lin Wood voted as a legal resident in the November election. A source with Raffensperger's office confirmed to CNN. Wood, a staunch supporter of former President Donald Trump, was one of the lawyers who unsuccessfully pushed a handful of lawsuits to block Georgia's election results after alleging fraud. The cases were rapidly dismissed by the courts and described as disinformation by state election officials. Wood said in a statement to CNN, "I have been a resident of the state of Georgia since 1955. I have changed my residency to South Carolina yesterday. This is pure harassment by the Georgia Secretary of State," he added before pushing more baseless voter fraud allegations. Earlier Tuesday, Wood told Justin Gray of WSB-TV that he had moved out of Georgia and been domiciled in South Carolina for several months after purchasing property in the state in April. Gray tweeted that those comments caught the eye of investigators. Wood said in a statement to CNN on Tuesday night that he has not been domiciled in South Carolina. "I have not been domiciled in South Carolina for several months," Wood told CNN. "I have spent time at my homes in Georgia and South Carolina. I considered myself to be domiciled and a resident of Georgia until yesterday when I made the decision to become a resident of South Carolina. Now I expect to be domiciled in South Carolina too. I will still frequently visit Georgia." Wood is an attorney who focuses on civil litigation and has experience in First Amendment and defamation litigation, according to his website. Though he's perhaps become best known for his fierce defense of Trump. He was permanently banned from Twitter last month after promoting the riots at the U.S. Capitol, according to BuzzFeed News. Wood was at first temporarily suspended for a tweet that incited violence, and then permanently banned after saying he would begin posting from another account, according to the outlet. He represented Kentucky high school student Nicholas Sandman, who settled a lawsuit with CNN after being at the center of a viral video controversy. Wood is also chairman and CEO of #FightBack, which raised $2 million cash bail for Kyle Rittenhouse, who has been ordered to stand trial in the fatal shooting of 2 men and wounding another in August during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and is currently represented by attorney Mark Richards. Raffensperger, meanwhile, has been adamant in defending the results of the presidential election as well as the integrity of the state's voting system, including when Trump pushed him to find votes on a phone call last month. In excerpts of the stunning one-hour phone call, Trump lambasted his fellow Republican for refusing to falsely say that he won the election in Georgia and repeatedly touted baseless claims of election fraud. "The people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated," Trump said in one part of the call. Raffensperger responded, "Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is, the data you have is wrong. First came COVID lockdown. Now a bushfire is forcing these Australians to evacuate. The state of Western Australia is facing an unprecedented situation as it battles a raging wildfire while millions of residents are under coronavirus lockdown. The state's Premier Mark McGowan said in a media briefing Wednesday. The Perth metropolitan area and the Peel and South West regions of Western Australia went into a 5-day lockdown Sunday after a single COVID-19 case was identified in a hotel security guard at a quarantine facility in the city. The lockdown is set to lift Friday evening, but the potential threat of a COVID-19 outbreak has been superseded by a more imminent danger, a bushfire raging near the town of Warraloo on Perth's outskirts. The most important thing is preservation of life, and so if you're quarantining and you're required to evacuate, you should just evacuate, Western Australia's Department of Fire and Emergency Services (DFES) Commissioner Darren Clem said in a media briefing Wednesday. That evacuation overrides any quarantining requirements that people might have. The blaze has already destroyed at least 71 homes, he said, adding that there were no reports of any deaths due to the fire. The number of burned-out homes is expected to rise, McGowan said. Western Australia is currently in the midst of an unprecedented situation. "We're fighting disasters on 2 fronts," McGowan said. Clem said it was important that people didn't become complacent and kept abreast of updates, adding, "It will continue to be a challenging fire for us for at least the next 3, 4, or 5 days." As of Tuesday evening, more than 8,000 hectares, nearly 20,000 acres, had been burned and hundreds of firefighters were involved in controlling the fire, according to DFES. The department said the cause of the out-of-control blaze is unknown. 3 evacuation centers have been set up, and DFES said it was humbled by the number of people wishing to help members of the community impacted by the bushfire. Lockdown in Western Australia. More than 2 million people are affected by Western Australia's full lockdown, with residents only able to leave their homes for essential shopping, medical needs, exercise, and for jobs that cannot be done at home or remotely. Schools, most businesses, entertainment venues and places of worship are all closed, and restaurants restricted to takeaway only. With a population of around 2.76 million, Western Australia has recorded 904 coronavirus infections since the pandemic began, though it currently only has 9 active cases, according to the state's health department. More than 800 of the state's confirmed cases are among international travelers and people who arrived by cruise ship or other vessel. Australia has recorded more than 28,000 COVID-19 cases, with 909 fatalities, the majority of which occurred in the southeastern states of Victoria and New South Wales. The country has shown success in controlling the virus through stringent lockdowns and tight border controls, with all international visitors required to undergo testing and quarantine. Other parts of Australia have also gone into lockdown over relatively few cases. Last year, South Australia ordered a 6-day shutdown after reporting 22 COVID cases. Although those restrictions were lifted early after officials found a pizza bar worker had lied to the contact tracing team, making authorities initially believe the person had caught coronavirus after a very short exposure. Brisbane also ordered a 3-day lockdown last month after a cleaner from a quarantine hotel tested positive for the coronavirus variant first identified in Britain. Trump brings false election claims back into GOP's mix. The note: the grand debate in Washington now is about the power of words, what they mean when coming from former President Donald Trump and those aligned with him, as well as those in his party aligned against him. The words submitted by Trump's impeachment defense team themselves matter even before the Senate trial begins next week. The former president's team is asserting that there was nothing improper about his plea for a state election official to find votes for him, and won't even concede the falsity of him telling rally-goers January 6 that "we won this election. And we won it by a landslide." The extent the impeachment document alleges his opinion is factually in error. The 45th president denies this allegation, Trump's legal team wrote in their official filing. Wednesday is a potentially momentous day for the Republican Party. The day after House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's long-awaited conversation with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Liz Cheney could face a reckoning inside her conference over her impeachment vote. The impending trial guarantees refreshed memories of the horrors that took place at the Capitol less than a month ago. Any thought the trial would turn on narrow constitutional questions is effectively out, given Trump's strategy of defiance. It's telling that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has had more to say about the House GOP drama than McCarthy, his House counterpart. McConnell recognizes the stakes not just of Trump and the likes of Greene, but of the words that have the ability to both empower and endanger. The rundown with Elisa Wiersma: Tuesday's confirmation of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, paired with Biden signing 3 executive orders focused on immigration, solidified the new administration's inheritance of several, layered repercussions stemming from Trump-era immigration policies. According to Biden's executive actions, as head of the DHS, Mayorkas will now steer a task force focused on migrant family reunification, overseeing the development of a strategy to address irregular migration across the southern border and reviewing the scope of Trump's immigration policies. There's a lot of talk, with good reason, about the number of executive orders that I have signed. I'm not making new law, I'm eliminating bad policy, Biden said on Tuesday. While the first part of that statement seemed to offer a defense of his near-daily use of executive orders to roll back Trump policies, the rest of Biden's comment could be interpreted as a precursor to possible questions about whether Tuesday's executive orders currently do enough to begin clearing up the nation's clouded immigration system. In a potential preview of the kind of feedback the White House could face in the coming days, Human Rights Watch Associate Director of the U.S. program, Clara Long, told ABC News on Tuesday that while she was supportive of the way the Biden administration has framed up its intention to restore asylum at the border, she was also a bit disappointed that it hasn't gone further, by having left in place problematic policies including summary expulsions under public health authority. The tip with Kendall Carson. It's been a month since the deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, and one of the leaders of the Republicans' last-ditch effort to help Trump subvert the election is cashing in on his loyalty to the former president. Missouri Sen. Josh Hawley, the first senator to publicly announce plans to challenge Biden's victory in Congress, raked in nearly $1 million in January. His best monthly haul since his first election to the Senate in 2018. According to a new memo from his campaign, it is crystal clear that a strong majority of Missouri voters and donors stand firmly with Senator Hawley. In spite of the continued false attacks coming from the radical left, the memo from Hawley's pollster, Wes Anderson, concluded, his early fundraising success is a sharp counterpoint to the backlash he received from 3 high-profile donors in Missouri who disavowed him and the more than 24 prominent companies who pulled back their corporate PAC giving to political campaigns. Some specifically targeting the GOP lawmakers who, like Hawley, objected to the election results in Congress. On the eve of impeachment week, the surge in grassroots support offers a glimpse into why the Republican refuses to show contrition for his actions leading up to January 6, continues to resist calls for his resignation, and will likely reinforce his penchant to stay closely aligned to Trump. It's also an early sign, but a strong one, that the gap within the GOP between the ever-loyal Trump faction and the establishment wing looking to move on from the former president could be widening. The playlist ABC News Start Here podcast. Wednesday morning's episode features an investigative report on concussions and the NFL with ABC's Ryan Smith. Then, ABC News legal analyst Kate Shaw breaks down what we know about the arguments in former President Donald Trump's second impeachment trial. And ABC News senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky reports on a shooting in Florida that left 2 FBI agents dead. http://apple.co/2hpocool What you need to know today. Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Dr. Anthony Fauci appears on ABC's Good Morning America. Rep. Adam Kinzinger R. appears on ABC's The View. A congressional tribute will be held for the late Capitol Police officer Brian Sicknick at 10:30 a.m. in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, where he is laying in honor. Members of Congress were invited to a visitation period from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. A ceremonial departure will take place at noon ahead of his interment at Arlington National Cemetery. Vice President Kamala Harris ceremonially swears in Pete Buttigieg as Secretary of Transportation in the Eisenhower Executive Office building at 9:30 a.m. The Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee considers the nomination of Gina Raimondo to be Secretary of Commerce at 9:30 a.m. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee considers the nomination of Linda Thomas Greenfield to be Ambassador to the United Nations at 9:45 a.m. The Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee holds a hearing on the nomination of Miguel Cardona to be Secretary of Education at 10 a.m. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee considers the nomination of Jennifer Granholm to be Secretary of Energy at 10 a.m. The Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee holds a hearing on the nomination of Isabella Guzman to be Administrator of the Small Business Administration at 10:30 a.m. The White House COVID-19 response team and federal public health officials hold a press briefing at 11 a.m. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki holds a briefing at 1:30 p.m. The Senate Environment and Public Works Committee holds a hearing on the nomination of Michael Regan to be Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency at 2:30 p.m. First Lady Jill Biden hosts a virtual event with spouses of senior Department of Defense and military leaders to discuss supporting military families at 3:30 p.m. later. She will virtually thank the National Cancer Institute for their research at 4:45 p.m., ahead of World Cancer Day on February 4. President Joe Biden and the Vice President receive the President's daily brief at 5:30 p.m.